If you are a couple on the other side of confessing a porn or sex addiction, or maybe you just got caught, you need a lot of help. The days and weeks following sexual betrayal are critical, and they can be extremely confusing and difficult to navigate. To help you with this, I want to share with you something that my wife and I used in those early days following my confession. Something that set us up for good connection and to experience healing in our marriage. In today's video, I'm going to share with you a couples sharing tool called Thanos. No, not Thanos from the Avengers, Thanos. Let's jump in. Well, hello again, friend, and welcome back to Sex Addicted Christian. I'm your guide, Jimmy Trent, and we are here to crush the shame, cultivate community, uncover the unseen, and take action. I'm extremely excited to be back with you guys today. I think today is going to be a really helpful episode. I've gotten lots of requests to do more conversations on marriage, sexual betrayal, and the like. And so in today's episode, we are going to give you a really helpful tool to help build into your recovery plan something that I think and personally have experienced will serve you well in your efforts to experience healing after sexual betrayal. But before we get into today's conversation, I want to make sure that you've got everything you need if you're seeking to move towards freedom and away from your addiction. I've written a simple checklist guide, The 4 Pillars of a Porn-Free Life, and it is a simple tool that you can download for free right now by clicking the link below or visiting sexaddictedchristian.com, and it's going to walk you through what I think are the 4 pillars of a porn-free life. It's the 4 things that you're going to have to make sure that you've got a grasp on and are giving attention to so that you can walk in the freedom that you so long for. In 28 days, you could be experiencing something completely different in regard to your relationship with sex and walking in freedom from the addiction that has had its hold on you for so long. So either now or after this video is over, please click the link below or visit the website and start your freedom journey today. So let's get back into it. What I want to help you today do is to cultivate intimacy after the betrayal of sex addiction. Your sex addiction has isolated you from the closeness that is intended for you in your marriage with your spouse. As we know, addictions isolate us. And so we know that in your marriage, you have been living a fraction of what is possible when it comes to being close and experience intimacy with your husband or with your wife. Something that I know from my own experience is going to pay massive dividends for you in your own freedom journey away from porn or sex addiction, while also benefiting your marriage and helping to cultivate healing, is going to be creating space for you and your spouse to share with one another in ways that you have not done historically. The bad habit of not connecting relationally with your spouse has to end now. Now that you're in recovery from your sex addiction, we want to walk towards freedom by including intentional conversations with one another. So I want to share with you a simple conversation tool. It's called Thanos, and it's an acronym, and it creates for you an intentional guide in connecting with one another. The first thing I want to do is walk you through the acronym, explaining each of the letters and how it pertains to this conversation. And then at the end, I'm going to share with you a few little details so that you fully understand how to execute this conversation, what the expectations are, what the boundaries might be, and how to make it work best for you. So Thanos is something that I picked up when I was first doing my sexual addiction recovery. I learned it through Mark and Debra Laaser at Faithful and True Ministries, and Debra includes it in her book, Shattered Vows, which was written to women who've experienced sexual betrayal. So Phanos, Phanos, is a Greek word, and what it means is to shed light on or to bring to the light. So you can see even by the acronym, we're already creating a vision for what the intention is of this conversation. We're wanting to shed light on one another, helping each other to see the things that are going on in each other's lives, which will give a greater expression of intimacy and closeness in the marriage that has lacked for so long. So let's run through the acronym, and then we'll deal with the details on how to do this conversation. First up is the F, and the F is for feelings. In this segment of the conversation, whoever is the speaker at the time is going to share any feelings that they have in the moment or over the course of time since the last time you did this check-in. Oftentimes, we experience multiple emotions even at the same time. So we may be feeling stressed about one thing, excited about another, and interested in something else, or maybe sad about another thing. So don't limit yourself to one emotion in these moments. Feel free to engage in different parts of your life, and be sure to include at least a sentence or two for context for each of those things. Don't just say, I'm sad, I'm also happy, and I'm a little bit worried. Now moving on. As the listener, as you share your feelings, emotions, I want to know a little bit of context for why you feel that feeling. If you struggle like me, you may need some help in identifying specific feelings. So it's always easy to just Google search feelings wheel or emotions. You can come up with all kinds of lists that will help you identify feelings so that it's not just the typical, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm fine. Let's move on to the A now. A is for affirmations. As the speaker in this moment, this is your opportunity to say something affirming about your spouse. This could be super simple, like, thank you so much for taking the trash out last night, or you cooked a really awesome meal tonight. I loved our dinner. You're such a great cook. This doesn't have to be super complicated, but what it's doing is it's creating in both of you an awareness of what you are thankful for in your spouse. Personally, I love this segment because I love hearing great things about myself, but I also love to encourage my wife in these moments as well. Okay, so moving on, F-A and then the N. N is for needs. Another really amazing part of the conversation check-in is being able to express to one another something that you need. These needs could be from something simple like, I just need to get in bed a little earlier tonight because I had a hard night sleeping last night, or it could be something bigger like, I need to go and plan for this vacation that we're taking. Who knows what it is, but this is an opportunity for you to express with one another something that you need. It doesn't have to be personal to the other person, like, I need you to do this. It does create for us, though, an opportunity to hear the needs of our spouse and then have a chance to meet that need if it's in our power to do so. When you have a chance to participate in meeting your spouse's need, we just call that loving your spouse well. And in doing so, you will build trust with one another, which is a big part of this recovery process. Now moving down to the O. O is a tough one sometimes. O is for ownership, or we might say an opportunity to confess something. Confession is hard, but we need to grow in our practice of acknowledging our weaknesses and the ways that we may have failed and bringing those to the light with our spouse and certainly with God. So again, whoever's speaking in this moment is going to take the opportunity to own something. It could be simple, like, hey, I snapped at the kids earlier whenever they weren't behaving and listening, and I just raised my voice, and I need to own that with you. Or it could be more interpersonal, like, hey, I was avoiding you earlier, I didn't want to talk, I was frustrated, so I'm sorry for being difficult earlier when we were talking. It could be something that happened outside of the house, like someone cut you off in traffic and you yelled at them and maybe said a choice word, and now you're feeling guilty or ashamed about those things. And so you might bring that up as something you own. This is another really good practice in our lives, is to get these things out of our heads. Oftentimes we carry around little incidents that we feel guilty or shame over, and it just compounds and compounds. And that shame or guilt or unconfessed sin will often lead the addict back to his or her addiction again. But in terms of the relationship and having this conversation with your spouse, owning things and expressing humility through doing so builds a lot of intimacy in the marriage. Okay, so lastly, the S. S is twofold because typically in a marriage in recovery, you've got one addict and then one spouse who was betrayed by that sexual addiction. So for the addict, the S stands for sobriety. And for the addict and the betrayed spouse, it stands for spiritual. So in this moment, I want both the addict and the betrayed to both share something about their spiritual walk in this moment. It's kind of like the question, how are you doing with God? Or how's your relationship with Jesus going right now? Are you struggling? Are you experiencing joy? What are you learning in the Bible? This is a great moment to give a simple check-in on how you're doing spiritually. For the addict, though, this is a chance to give an update on his or her sobriety. If you don't know what I mean by sobriety, I would love for you to go watch the 3 Circles video. I'll link it up below, but that's going to help you define your sobriety so you know how to update your spouse in this part of the conversation. Essentially, what's happening in this moment is you have created what we call the inner circle or the off-limit behaviors or the active addictive things that you have done that you are now committed to not doing. In this conversation, then, this is a chance for the addict to update their spouse on whether or not they have participated in any of these inner circle behaviors, which we would say is a breaking of his or her sobriety. One of the things that we're doing in recovery as marriage partners is we're having to rebuild trust. And the spouse that's been betrayed by the sexual acting out of their spouse has a big trust issue. Part of that lack of trust is a constant wondering whether or not their spouse is still acting out. Remember, the addiction has been a secret. Most of the time, the betrayed spouse had no idea this was going on. So now it's hard for them to believe that it's not still going on. What we're doing in this part of the conversation is we're taking the burden off of the betrayed spouse to have to constantly ask their spouse whether or not they have looked at porn, masturbated, or whatever the off-limit behavior is. We are now allowing this conversation, Thanos, to bring us into that moment so the spouse knows they are going to get an update from their spouse on whether or not these behaviors have been participated in. I know it's a challenging moment, but this accountability and the opportunity to speak these things to one another creates a lot of space for healing as time goes on. So that's the outline. Thanos: feelings, affirmations, needs, ownership, and sobriety/spiritual update. Before we end today, I want to give you just a few details on how to execute this conversation so that you're best set up to get after this conversation as soon as this video is over. So first, for couples who have just experienced sexual betrayal or it's just become known in the relationship, I'd like for you to consider starting this and doing it consistently for at least 30 days. The first few days, weeks, and even months are the most critical as couples seek to recover from sexual betrayal. I'd like for you guys to commit to at least doing it daily for 30 days. But look, don't get caught up in the perfection of that. The point here is to build intimacy, not perfectly do check-ins every day. Remember, anything is greater than 0. What about time limit? I suggest couples spending a limited amount of time doing this check-in so that it doesn't become overwhelming. My aim in doing a Thanos check-in with my wife is to aim for 10 minutes. 5 minutes for her and 5 minutes for me. This takes a lot of pressure off of the conversation because if these conversations go 30 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, or long into the night, no one's ever going to want to do these check-ins because they can be so exhausting. So I suggest giving it a 10-minute time limit. And then if you guys decide to talk longer afterwards, then so be it. Or maybe one person wants to talk and the other person is not wanting to talk in the moment. Schedule a time to follow up on one of the things that was mentioned, but limit the conversations to 10 minutes at a time and then see where it goes from there. Now, when you engage in the Thanos check-in, each spouse is going to work through the outline by themselves first. So it's not going to go F and then F and then A and then A. One spouse is going to work all the way from top to bottom, and then when they're done updating, then they pass the conversation over to their husband or wife, and then they do their check-in. So husband, 5-minute check-in, pass the conversation over, wife, 5-minute check-in. A small warning for those that are going to be listening in the conversation is this. When your spouse is sharing, you may be tempted to want to engage in a way that's maybe argumentative or defensive or wanting to explain something to make sure that you're represented well in the way that she or he is sharing. This isn't your time to do that. I want for you to engage in the conversation primarily by listening and understanding. So if you need to ask for clarification on a particular point, that's fine. But this isn't a time to make the conversation about you. Let it be about your spouse while they're sharing. And then when it's your turn, you'll have your opportunity to share as well. So that's all the details that I can think about in trying to set you guys up for success to start doing your Thanos check-in. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment below and I'll try to answer there, or you can email me, jimmy@sexaddictedchristian.com, and I'd love to just answer any questions to make sure that this feels easy, approachable, and you can move forward in building intimacy with your spouse. So let's start this today. Share this video with your spouse if you're watching it alone and ask them, will you start building intimacy and closeness with me again through this Thanos check-in, and commit to doing it for at least 30 days. I'm confident if you and your spouse can work through this conversation check-in over time, you will look back in the coming weeks or months and realize this was extremely helpful to add to your recovery process. Some of you here, though, may not have even confessed to your wife or your husband yet your sex addiction. If that's you, I want to help you take your first steps towards your freedom. So I've written the 4 pillars of a porn-free life. It's a simple checklist guide. It walks you through each of the pillars: crushing the shame, cultivating community, uncovering the unseen, and taking action. It's in a checklist format. It should only take you about 4 weeks to complete, 1 pillar for each week, and you will be well on your way to the freedom that you long for from this sex, porn, lust addiction. So if that seems like something that would be helpful to you, the link is below here on Facebook or YouTube, or you can always visit the website sexaddictedchristian.com, and it's a free download right now as a gift from me to you. I want to help. I want to serve. I want to guide you. I want you to know the freedom that is yours in Christ and no longer be bound to this sex addiction. So let's take the next step towards our freedom. Start your Thanos check-in conversations with your spouse or significant other and download the 4 pillars of a porn-free life. Freedom is waiting for you, friend. I love you. I can't wait to see you again soon. God bless you. I'll see you next time.